Thomas the Tank Engine was just pulling his faithful coaches, Annie and Clarabelle, along his branchline when a flash of color whizzed by him. He wanted to pick up speed and get a closer look.
Steady, Thomas. There's plenty of time.
But can't we get closer to that car? It looks like station masters to me.
Lots of cars look like that.
But they decided to open the regulator and they began to draw level. There were two men in the car. They waved at Thomas and they tried to go faster.
That's the car, alright. And those two better be the thieves. But we can't stop them. They'll be long gone before we reach the next station. We need pencil, paper, and something to put the message in. We'll throw it out at the next signal box.
So they've written the letter and they placed it in the fireman's empty lunch table. Then, drawing ahead of the car, Thomas whistled loud and long to get the signalman's attention. They slowed so that way they can toss the lunch table at him.
Police!
But at this point, the car was well ahead and Thomas never saw it again. But 10 miles ahead, the police arrived and apprehended the crooks and retrieved the stolen items. When Thomas arrived at the next station, the passengers went out and cheered for Thomas. And Sir Topham Hatt quoted a speech. A long time ago, Thomas showed how valuable he is to the smooth running of my railway. And I'm sure that you will all agree that today, once again, he has proven himself to be a really useful engine. Within the island of Sodor, there were a lot of adventures and events. There were some struggles. There was some teamwork. There were some runaways. And there were a few mishaps here and there. Every engine within the island stood strong and proud, even during their worst moments. But it doesn't have to be big engines who have to have the big, great stories. Little engines can do big things. Like Thomas, who is the pride of his own branchline. But he's not alone. Daisy helps him out with some passengers as well. And she can take the long way as well up to Knapford. Toby helps out with the passengers as well. But he can tend to do both passengers and freight. Although the engine who does the real work in freight is Percy the Small Engine, who could take some trucks from the quarry and from the mine up to the harbor. Speaking of quarry, there is a diesel that runs the quarry, and her name is Mavis. She would often leave the quarry to take the loaded trucks to the top station, which is at Farquhar. But between the quarry and the top station, there's a level crossing that cars would often dash over hazardously.
Someday, there'll be an accident.
Mavis understood, for she can recall Thomas having trouble with a constable. Good morning, sir.
Disgraceful! I didn't sleep a wink last night. It was so quiet. And now engines come whistling suddenly behind me. My first day in the country, too.
I'm sorry, sir. I only said good morning.
The constable then went up to Thomas's front and examined it carefully. At last he spoke.
Where's your cowcatcher?
But
I don't catch cows, sir.
Don't be funny. No side plates either. Engines going on public roads must have their wheels covered and a cow catcher in front. You haven't, so you are dangerous to the public.
Rubbish. We've been on this line hundreds of times, and we've never had an accident.
That makes it worse.
And he wrote regular lawbreaker on his notepad. Therefore, only Toby and Mavis can be going in and out of the quarry. Stop here, Toby! This bridge is getting old. Right. Carry on. The sheds where the Branchline engines are within Tidmouth. Thomas, Percy, and Toby rested in there. Then Sir Topham had arrived with some news. I'm going to have to put a weight limit over that bridge. Percy and Toby should be fine, as well as Daisy. But Thomas, I'm afraid, you're too heavy to puff across it. However, I will allow you to work on Edward's Branchline for a while.
Can Annie and Clarabelle come, sir?
Sorry, Thomas, but they have to stay here. Daisy can't carry all of her passengers on her own. Thomas sighed.
Don't worry, we'll look after Annie and Clarabelle while you're away.
And Thomas puffed away to see Edward, which made him feel better.
Hello, Thomas. So, how are things on the Branchline?
Things are good, although there's a weight limit on one of the bridges. So Sir Topham had sent me here to work with you.
Well, in that case, I'd like you to meet the China Clay Pit twins.
Twins from China?
Oh dear then, not another blue engine. There's Edward. Now don't forget. Oh yes, but seriously Edward, why can't Sir Topham Hatt paint engines a proper colour like us folks?
Well, let me tell you, sky blue can tend...
Alright, you two. Go and move those trucks or there won't be room for any more. You don't have to take them too seriously.
Thanks, Edward. I just wish I knew how you can handle them.
Edward chuckled and continued on to work. Come the following hour, Mavis was working as hard as she could. She was late for her next train because the trucks were rearranged in all different locations.
I know.
Off to Netford, then.
That's right. Be cautious with the clay.
Will do. I'll take her nice and smooth. See you later.
Along Lower Sudbury, there was a lorry, which often had problems, and it was loaded with milk, eggs, and butter. Suddenly, it spluttered to a halt right along the crossing.
Faster, woo-hoo! Woo!
Ahead, Thomas saw the lorry.
Driver, stop!
We can't stop in time, Mavis. Looks like we'll have to take the hit.
Oh, my lordy! What a way to make an omelet! Poor Thomas was covered in eggs, milk, and butter. The driver went back to survey the damage, but when he saw Thomas, he couldn't help but laugh.
It's not funny.
You're not standing where I am. You look like a scrambled egg, Thomas.
Well, if a scrambled egg feels wet and sticky, then it feels uncomfortable. Please clean me.
But it was no good. The heat from Thomas's boiler solidified the eggs.
I didn't mean to hit him.
No one's blaming you. But we better see if the driver's alright. Are you okay, sir?
Oh, yeah, I'm fine. Is that a train?
It certainly is.
At the yards, Thomas was getting cleaned up when the twins arrived.
Who's that, Bill? Looks like a new engine. No, it's not. It's just Thomas. But he's in our colour. And Thomas doesn't think our colour's a proper colour.
Then they heard a gritting noise.
Are your joints stiff, Bill?
But it wasn't any of the twins' joints. It was Thomas, grinding his teeth. Mavis's front cowcatcher was badly dented, so Sir Topham Hatt made arrangements for Toby to work on her quarry duties and take the trucks to the harbor. Toby remembered the harbor that he used to work on in East Anglia between 1923 and 1948. But he wasn't alone. His brethren helped out as well.
I'm too old to dash about like I did, backwards and forwards all day from the harbor to the big station, with never any chance of a holiday. But I did go to the seaside once.
One day, Toby's crew arrived with some great news.
We've been promised a trip to the seaside.
What do you mean?
There's a seaside village near here where they have a festival each year. Lots of people come to it, and one of the organisers think it's a good idea to have a display of engines at the station as a special attraction, and you, Toby, are to be one of them.
They went to an engine works nearby the big station. Lots of engines were receiving some repairs in there. A lot of ambience and hard work going on. And as for Toby, he was getting prepped up for the festival. He was getting waxed, and his bell was getting so polished that it shone like gold, and his driver could see his reflection in it.
You haven't looked so smart in years. I barely even recognized you.
So they made their way to the seaside. As Toby stopped to get some water, he saw an engine approaching the platform. He was older than Toby. His side rods clanked, he was very dirty, and steam leaked everywhere.
The poor engine. Can I help pull his train to the seaside, please?
The station master and the engine crew agreed. So Toby coupled up to the front, and the cavalcade moved on.
Festival time is the best time of the year. Lots of extra-tainted visitors. I'll expect you will be able to stand in a long carriage siding.
At last, Toby and the old engine made their way to the seaside. The station master was surprised to see Toby. He heavily sighed and walked away, shaking his head. Later that evening, Toby rested in a siding. He couldn't wait for tomorrow's festival. As Toby woke up, He smelled the salty water and viewed the beautiful sights and sounds. He also noticed some unfamiliar white birds in the air, making some unfamiliar cawing noises. He was wondering what they were, and wanted to ask his crew when they returned. They did, looking distraught.
It's all off, Toby. They say there's nowhere for you to stand.
But what's wrong with where I am? I'm not in anyone's way.
It's just an excuse, I reckon. The real trouble is you're too smart, Toby. They're afraid you'll show up your branch like us. I'm sorry, Toby. Toby! Toby, wake up!
Toby woke up with a start as the doors flung open,
Time for work.
and he got into the cab. Toby sighed after his events.
Well, I did get to the seaside, even if it wasn't for long. But I think Sir Topham Hatt would have managed all that festival business much better.
On Edward's Branchline, the twins could not stop teasing Thomas.
Morning, Thomas. How would you like your eggs?
Alright, enough. Now then, a party of railway enthusiasts are coming soon. I won't bring them unless you behave.
When?
Next week, but not if you don't behave.
The twins promised to behave, for they loved the railway enthusiasts, always having to take pictures. Things were quite well for Thomas. He rarely had the trouble with the twins, but every day they would continue to ask,
Is it next week?
"Next week never comes," he would always mysteriously answer. But the twins didn't mind. Every morning they would urge their drivers to make themselves look spick and span.
What's this then? The enthusiasts aren't going to eat breakfast on you.
No. What if we were tired?
They sniggered, and they were lucky neither Edward or Thomas were there to hear them. At last, the day came for the enthusiasts to arrive. The engineers gave the engines one last polishing. They soon heard a familiar whistle. Thomas approached with the enthusiasts. Everyone was excited, Bill and Ben mostly. There were so many enthusiasts that Bill and Ben had no idea which way to look. Soon came the time to give enthusiasts rides. Due to the fact Bill and Ben were short engines, some enthusiasts forgot to duck when they hit their cabs, but they didn't mind. The day was about to end soon for the enthusiasts when a workman came up. "A ship needs help leaving the docks. One of you see to it, please." Ben left, leaving Bill behind. One enthusiast had his camera up. "Just one more." He was setting up his tripod, which took a while. Eventually, Bill grew annoyed of this. "Almost. Perfect. What a picture." Then, the workman returned. "The ship is stuck in the mud, and Ben can't pull it on his own."
Right, Bill. We can't wait any longer.
And Bill left with a whoosh. Right as the enthusiast snapped the picture, he looked at the photo and he threw it down in disgust. Bill caught up with his twin and they coupled up together.
When we say heave, heave. 1, 2, 3, heave.
The twins strained and pulled with all their might. The chain tightened behind them.
Come on.
Wheels screeching. At last, the ship slid out of the mud and out onto the open water. The twins watched as the ship honked its thank you. After the event, the driver walked out and something caught his eye. He picked up the photo that the enthusiast threw down. It appeared to be an engine within a cloud of steam.
What's a picture?
Thomas was just bringing the enthusiast home, station by station, when he saw Edward pulling a train, some ballast wagons with some weird-looking blankets. His driver called them hoods. Thomas was quite unfamiliar with the term hoods. "Why hoods?" asked Thomas to the twins.
Those hoods are a thing like tents. They keep the clay dry. Wet clay goes in the tankers.
Within the Branchline, Trevor wasn't feeling too well. He could barely breathe properly.
Your boiler needs mending, but I can't afford it at present.
Later on, the vicar received a phone call that made him excited, and he went to tell Trevor.
Good news. You may be a bit under the weather, but you can manage this. The foreman has a tree down and wants you to saw it up for him.
When he found the steam, Trevor made his way to the field and sawed the trees. He enjoyed this job, but what he enjoyed most was taking children out, for he loved children. He even was familiar with the hoods as well, but to his point of view, they were just simply trucks. Edward was passing by with a train when he felt the rail sink beneath him.
That feels like a loose rail. We better tell the maintenance people.
He made his way to the docks to pick up some new trucks after he dropped off the empties. But as he made his way across the field, the rail sank beneath him again. Only this time, 6 trucks from Edward's train snapped behind him. And they crashed right behind him. Thankfully, the guard was unharmed, but he raced along the rails trying to get Edward's attention, blowing his whistle. Shh, shh. But Edward didn't hear the whistle, and Trevor did. He noticed that the trucks were derailed and aligned in very strange angles. Building up steam, he went on over to get Edward's attention.
Beep, beep. Stop it! Stop! It's Trevor. What's wrong?
We better stop and see.
He hit the brakes hard. Edward's driver clambered onto the top of Edward's cab, and what he saw, he nearly fell over.
Phew! It's not Trevor, it's us!
With no time to waste, Edward's driver scrambled back into his cab, and they called for the breakdown train to clear up the mess. Soon it was all sorted out, and Sir Topham Hatt came to congratulate Trevor. Due to your bravery, you shall head to my workshop tomorrow. We'll have your boiler fixed up in no time. Trevor beamed with delight. Back on the Farquhar branch, Percy was shunting.
Leave those trucks here, Percy. There's an emergency down at the harbour.
But Toby can't.
Never mind that. The Fat Controller needs you double quick.
Percy decided not to argue and made his way to Knapford Harbor.
Oh boy, well, I think we'll have a nasty grip from Bulstrode.
Now Bulstrode was a highly disagreeable barge, quite a pessimistic one, always complaining about work not being done on time.
Come on. Why aren't you trucks where you should be? How can I get some work done whilst you dawdle around up there, eh?
There's no engine, and we can only go where we're put.
You're in the wrong place, not us.
And they were right. Bulstrode was indeed in the wrong place, but he wasn't going to let a little thing like that get in the way of what he wanted done. He and the trucks would argue for minutes, but it would make no difference.
You know, if I were an amphibious vehicle, I would drive up there without the bottom to wait for an engine and shut you trucks myself.
Fat chance! The irony is you don't have any coupling hooks or buffers.
Yeah, at least we're not the ones playing whole act.
Oh, well then, here comes our engine now.
Our stone is for Bulstrode.
Please, put us in a siding so that we can load him up and be rid of it.
But as Percy made his way, one of the truck's brakes slipped on. And when he pushed them, the coupling snapped.
Help! Help!
Help! Help!
Heavy with stone, the trucks gained momentum towards the quay. And for Bulstrode, things were gonna get a whole lot worse. One by one, the trucks piled themselves on top of Bulstrode's hull. Percy watched in horror as the grumpy barge gained water.
Save me! I am drowning!
Thankfully, the tide was low.
Nothing but a nuisance he was.
You were always barging in and moaning.
This time he got his load faster than he bargained for.
Serves you right.
That's what you get! Lousy driftwood! Percy had to stay a little longer to clear up the mess. He took the truck's remains to the scrapyard. And as for Bulstrode, they towed him away towards Tidmouth Beach. There you are. Now you shall stay there, and children will play on you, and then you'll be useful again. A storm was brewing over the island of Sodor. Heavy rains were coming in. One area in particular would often get flooded. This was at Edward's Branchline, and many locals would call this area the Drain. In the China clay pits, Ben was just coupled up to a train, and he departed away. Although he had to battle with the rain. Eventually, the Drain was approaching. The wind howled.
Come on, we must get through in order to help Ben.
Ben was persistent and charged on. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a massive wave came in and splashed Ben. The drivers tried to reverse, but Ben's cab was fully submerged with water, and there was no fire to make steam. Ben's driver trundled through the water just to find help. Meanwhile, at Wellsworth, Thomas was waiting for his trucks. Until cold, wet, but weary, Ben's driver came up to Thomas.
Ben stopped stranded in the water. We need long cables, a pair of waders, and determination.
Thomas understood the cable, but he wasn't too sure about determination, and he had no idea what waders were. Eventually, Thomas made his way towards Ben. He was delighted to see Thomas. First, they uncoupled the train so that way Bill could take it back to the clay pits. Next, Thomas approached towards Ben slowly. The driver put on the waders and coupled the cable to Ben in order to pull Ben out of the water. At last, when Ben was on dry land, it was safe for Thomas to completely couple onto him. It took 4 days, but the rain stopped and the train flushed away, meaning the twins were reunited with each other. They thanked Thomas, and they vowed to never play a trick on him again. While Percy was away at the harbor, Terence was doing the shunting.
That's what my owner says I am. Go anywhere, do anything. That's me. You take my advice and scrap your rails. Broaden your outlook like me.
Well, I would prefer my rails, thank you very much.
Steam engines did plow once upon a time and ran on roads.
The engines understood, for they would remember Trevor. Of course, Trevor didn't boast that much, and he doesn't want the rails scrapped. The repairs for Mavis took longer than expected, but Toby didn't mind. He enjoyed taking some trucks to the harbor. It was a cold and brisk night that evening. Eventually, it grew so cold that the rails along the crossing had some ice frozen over. Unaware of this, Toby was heading straight towards trouble.
Oh, what's happening?
Whoa there, Toby.
Oh dear, now what?
No problem. With care, we shall have back on the rails.
I don't see how.
But signaled by the fireman, the driver carefully reversed Toby onto the rails again. At last, Toby was back on the rails.
Well done, Toby. Now I'll spread some hot ash in the frozen rails so this won't happen again. Then we'll be safely at the quarry and no one will be any wiser.
Although they had quite a story to tell for Sir Topham Hatt. At last, not only Mavis returned, but also Thomas returned as well. Then Sir Topham Hatt approached Toby. "What's that I hear? Trying to become a traction engine?" Toby blushed, but Sir Topham Hatt wasn't cross. "Let's just say that we leave the road for what it's built. You'll be more pleasant to stay on your rails." Toby had to agree. "As for you, Thomas, I received a special letter from the UK saying that you'll be paying a visit to the National Railway Museum."
I am?
I don't believe it. What's Thomas got that an important engine like me hasn't? Tell me that. Gallivanting off to museum.
Ha! He is old. If Sir Topham Hatt says he should be a museum piece, I don't see why we should worry.
It's not fair, though.
The next day, whenever the bigger engines saw Thomas, they rudely glared at him.
They're jealous. But there's something I'm kind of confused on. Those people at, where is it, York? It's strange how they know me. Surely the people in the UK haven't seen me before. Yes, they have. On the television by Britt Alcroft. Driver told us about it.
1 week later, the day came for Thomas to head off to York. He was very excited. He tooted his goodbyes to his Branchline friends and puffed away in the distance. And when his presence vanished, everyone grew sad. Percy specifically.
Thomas has left the Branchline a few times more. I don't know if we can manage it on our own.
We did it once, we can do it again.
At least I hope so.
So, with that settled, while Thomas was away at York, Percy handled his passenger trains, as well as his own trains. Daisy took the fast route that went up to Knapford. Toby continued on taking his passengers, as well as taking freight from Mavis as well. Come the following week, it started to snow.
I think snow is pretty. It won't dare give me trouble, and I've got the rails to guide me.
Her driver was less confident about this.
Daisy hasn't got the rate of a steam engine. She can't push her way through, and we all know that Thomas got stuck, don't we?
Don't we ever? He's told us often enough. A little later, Gordon arrived with his passenger train.
I think snow is rarely a problem. Just a few flimsy flakes won't stop me.
Quite right. Well done. But I'm late. I haven't got time to gossip.
Daisy proudly strolled along the countryside. At first, the weather was all right, but eventually it grew a bit darker and colder. Soon a blizzard was a-brewing.
Woof. I don't like this.
Daisy rounded a bend and stopped at a signal box. Her driver went into the signal box to see how bad the weather is. He returned, looking distraught with the signalman.
There are deep snowdrifts ahead. I'm afraid we can't go through.
That's right. It will be difficult, but Daisy will try and get you people to the next station.
I can't breathe properly.
The snow is clogging your air intake, I suppose.
So he went out and removed the snow. But when she started up again, she still continued to have engine problems. She can go no further. Her driver left Daisy, and he trundled through the snow to get back to the signalman for help.
They promised to help us, but goodness knows how they'll do it.
Poor Daisy felt like crying, but she didn't want her tears to freeze her face. Soon, they heard a heavy buzzing noise. Daisy was afraid that it was another blizzard, but it wasn't. It was Harold the helicopter. He went down to the passengers and dropped hot drinks for them, and one by one, he picked the passengers up as what Daisy could describe as some sort of chair. The passengers thanked Harold for his rescue, but unfortunately for Daisy, it was unknown how she'll be rescued. It was an entire week before Toby had to come to rescue Daisy. Daisy doesn't think snow is so pretty anymore. Near the end at Thomas's Branchline, there was an old bridge, and under it was a river. The melted snow had made the river rise, which made Percy worry.
Don't worry, Percy. The water has to be a lot higher in order to catch us.
Percy was worried. He remembered the time when he got stuck in the flood. He was very cold and very wet. However, Toby brought some good news, for the water level was much lower than yesterday's. His driver even went out to check the water level as well.
Toby's right. The water is low today. Come on, we've got a timetable to keep.
They soon met up with Henry around the junction.
When is Thomas coming back? If he does, I won't surprise if he decided to stay as a museum piece. He's old enough.
And Henry left, chortling at his own wit.
Thomas? In a museum? No, he couldn't abandon us. Now, calm down. Calm down, you two. He would never.
Percy was spending so much time comforting Annie and Clarabelle that he was late for his next train. And he was later still when he was taking up water at the next junction.
Never mind, at least we don't have to stop at the station before the bridge, so there's nothing to delay us.
The bridge was approaching, but as he started to cross it, there was an ominous creak. Well, Percy, the bridge swayed.
Don't stop, Percy! Keep moving!
Percy didn't mean to stop, and that was lucky. 1 second the bridge was there, the next it vanished. It was safe to stop now. Annie, Clarabelle, and Percy were all badly shaken. His firemen even went back to look. Nothing but pieces of wood were streaming along the brown, murky water. Sir Topham had to close the line in order to make repairs for the bridge. At first, Toby and Percy enjoyed their break, but as the days went by, they eventually grew bored. At last, the bridge was repaired, and everyone was extra careful, especially Percy, for he nearly had a bath. I say, it does feel good to stretch our wheels again, and going back to work. Me pulling passengers and you at the harbor, which I just don't get. What's so special about it?
I like it. It reminds me of the old days. I worked at a harbor on the mainland. I told you, remember?
Oh, yeah. But one detail about Toby is that he has a small water tank.
What if we run out of water halfway?
We shan't.
What if the water column breaks down? Thomas warned me about the water in the river.
Don't fret, Toby. We won't take you fishing like Thomas did.
Eventually, Toby arrived at the harbor. He returned to the Branchline with some empty trucks. Although, this time, Mavis was running late.
I hope she hasn't had another accident with a lorry.
At last, the station master came up.
Mavis wasn't feeling well. She's better now and on her way with the train.
And he was right. And with a tearful toot, Mavis arrived with the train. Toby went away to make up for lost time. But as he arrived at the harbor, there were so many trucks that he barely had room to place his own.
Phew! 48 trucks and not one empty. Some megatrain. You might as well leave some here and make 2 journeys tomorrow.
Can we take them all now? We should be alright.
His crew scratched their heads, but it was decided to take all the trucks. But Toby had completely forgotten about his small water tank, meaning he had to use all of his steam and power. He also forgot that the journey was all uphill. But Toby trundled on courageously. At this point, Toby used so much steam that he was low on water. So they went to the water tower and they turned the tap. Nothing happened.
Oh dear, now what?
We could make it your own, but not with this load. But I do know where to get some water.
Is it far?
Not really.
Where are we gonna get water?
You'll see.
And then they arrived at the Ellsbridge Viaduct, and the driver got out.
Now, where's my bucket?
Toby was horrified.
Oh, you promised!
Don't worry, we're only pulling your wheel. We'll get you water at the top station and then come back for your trucks.
Toby was infuriated, and while he was getting filled up with water, he told Percy everything. Percy couldn't help but to laugh.
It's not funny.
Sorry, Toby, but if you like, I'll help you pull your next train.
Sorry, Percy, but we've got a train to pull.
Oh, sorry, Toby.
Don't worry, I'll be sure to have those trucks here in a jiffy.
And sure enough, they did. Within Thomas's branch line, there was a level crossing that needed repairs, and George the steamroller was called up. He was such an unpleasant sight.
Railways are no good. Turn them into roads. Blow them up. Turn them into roads.
Nonsense! People wouldn't make it to the villages in the valley without our rails.
I'll build a road along your old tracks. Nothing to it. My mate's done it all over the place.
Daisy didn't have the slightest care for George's words. However, she was worried that it might be true. She told the others about it, and Toby knew that George was right.
Sir Topham Hatt wouldn't allow it.
Daisy was reassured, but she also didn't want to make George mad just in case. But the next day, there was some splendid news that made them all lose their worries.
Thomas is coming home next week.
Everyone was excited, including Annie and Clarabelle.
Sir Topham Hatt is holding a welcome home party at the top station.
Loads of nonsense. Make no difference. Your railways will be a road before long, you'll see.
Yet still, Daisy took no notice for George. She was picking up some important passengers along her way, including Mr. and Mrs. Conway.
There we go.
But as she approached the level crossing, a massive gale came in.
Ouch!
And a cone slid right under her. Eventually, she started getting some problems. Her brakes were getting jammed.
Grr. Help, I'm stuck.
The cone has damaged your brakes. We'll have to call a fitter.
Why can't that steamroller watch what he's doing? I bet he did this on purpose.
After the mending, she eventually arrived at the party. Then she heard an applause.
No, we're too late.
No, we're not. Thomas hasn't arrived yet. It's us they're cheering on.
Then, in the distance, they can hear a familiar whistle. And the applause grew even bigger as Thomas puffed into the station, tired but having a broad smile on him. Everyone honked their horns and tooted their whistles when Thomas halted on the rails. And on his smokestack, there stood the plaque that the National Railway Museum has given him. Everyone cheered until Sir Topham Hatt silenced the crowd. "Welcome home, Thomas. We are all very proud of you, and we're very delighted to have you return. 3 cheers for Thomas the Tank Engine! Hip hip, hooray! Hip hip, hooray! Hip hip, hooray!
It's good to have you back, Thomas. It's good to see you all too. So tell me, what all has happened while I was away?